Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Facebook Live. We are here at Middleton High School as the Tigers are taking on the Sickles Griffins. We are joined here today by none other than our sports medicine specialist and official team physician of Sickles High School, Dr. Adam Morse. Dr. Morse, how are you?
Very good, thanks. Glad to be here tonight. Looking forward to a safe and healthy match.
So Dr. Morse, we wanted to talk to you today about non-orthopedic related injuries and illnesses. We're about 2 or 3 weeks away from the end of summer, but that does not mean that it is any less cool in this Florida heat. So can you tell us a little bit more about heat-related illnesses?
Sure. In this time of year in Florida, this has been a severely warm summer, so heat illness is a very big concern. And there are 3 different types of heat illness: heat cramps, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke.
What are the differences between those 3?
So they're varying degrees of the same problem. When the body starts to overheat, it starts to sweat. When you lose water and you lose salts, the muscles start to cramp up from overexertion. And the first sign you'll notice is cramping and tightening of the muscles. So you'll see a lot of athletes on the field with the trainers running out and having to stretch them out to get the muscles to stop cramping, and then we'll recommend that they hydrate to see if they can get the muscles cool back down and the electrolytes back in to get the cramping to settle down. When the body's ability to keep it cool starts to get significantly more difficult, the body will massively start producing sweat, which helps to cool the body down. But sometimes in Florida, because it's so humid and it's so hot, that combination causes this overwhelming sweat, which depletes your fluids in your body and gets you severely dehydrated. When that happens, you'll start to get very fatigued. You'll start noticing the athletes are just not just tired physically, but just look drained. They'll start looking a little bit pale. They'll look like they're just sweating profusely and they just can't seem to catch their breath, and they'll be exhausted beyond belief. When the cooling system finally shuts down because there's not enough fluid to sweat out anymore, the body will start to heat up uncontrollably and the temperature will go up above 105 degrees. When that happens, it's called heat stroke, and the organ systems will start to shut down. One of the first is the central nervous system, so you'll start seeing them confused and disoriented. Rather than be sweaty and sometimes cool, they'll get dry on the skin and they'll start getting really hot, and that becomes a medical emergency. So you'll see at most of the high school football fields, we'll have large Rubbermaid tubs, and they'll be filled with ice and water, and we'll put the athletes in those to cool their body temperature down as safely and quickly as possible to prevent end organ damage or shutting down of the kidney, the liver, the muscles, and the brain from this, which can potentially end in death if it's not done properly. So typically, every minute they lose about 0.2 of a degree. So if they're at 105, we need to get them down to a minimum of 102 degrees. So we will drop them down over about a 15 to 20 minute period in an ice bath and constantly monitor their temperature. Once they get down to about 102, we'll start to remove them from the ice bath because we don't want them to go hypothermic or get too cold, because that can have systemic effects as well if you drop them too low. So as they start normalizing, what we're going to do is we're going to start bringing them out and just cool them, get them to a safe place, and get them transported to the hospital for further definitive evaluation. If you see somebody who's getting transported by the ambulance, or if you have a child who's in the cold water immersion tub, do not get them out and rush them to the hospital, because the cooling process takes precedent and has been shown to be much safer to get their body temperature back down before we transport to prevent death.
And with all this heat and all these rising temperatures, are we only seeing heat-related illnesses in outdoor sports like football and baseball, or can we see those in more indoor sports as well, like basketball, or even like a cold environment like ice hockey?
So yes, while it is much more common to see heat-related illness in hot environments, wrestling inside a gym, they like to turn the heat up to get the athletes to sweat profusely to help get their body weight down. This produces a severe response and can end up resulting in heat exhaustion on a very common basis. Any sport, where the athletes are covered in a lot of gear, such as ice hockey, and they're working really hard and they're sweating profusely because they're covered in so much padding and gear, and they have a helmet on in hockey and in football, which makes it a lot harder for the coaches and the trainers to be able to look at them from a distance and determine their mental status just from their appearance. So there's a much higher risk of heat exhaustion in that as well.
And are there any foolproof ways to prevent heat illness, or what are the preventative measures?
So there is no foolproof way to prevent heat illness. However, there are a lot of things that we can do and recommend to keep the athlete safe. One, always make sure that before an athletic event, and including practice or games, you hydrate. Make sure that you've been drinking all the day and make sure your fluid levels are back up. Before you start, your urine should be clear. You should be drinking fluids throughout the day. If you're having two-a-days in the summer, you should make sure that you're in cool environment, like inside the house with the air conditioner on, and you should be drinking until your urine comes back to normal before you go out for that second practice in a day. There should always be several hours for you to rehydrate, and that's written into the state laws. And in addition to that, during practice, you should be going through 2 large bottles of water every hour minimum, and that's just to stay moderately hydrated. That's probably not going to be enough, but it's at least a start so you're not depleting too rapidly to the point where you're going to end up with heat exhaustion or heat stroke. Second, acclimatization. It's also written into our state laws. When you come out during the first practices of the season, you shouldn't be wearing full pads. You should be only wearing a helmet. And before practice even starts, you should be outside. You should be getting used to the heat. You should be exercising in the heat so that when practice starts and the intensity level increases, your body's already used to the temperature, and your body's already used to exercising rigorously so that it's not such a shock to the system. If you can do all of this, your chances of heat illness or heat exhaustion are going to drop dramatically.
And lastly, Dr. Morse, you are the immediate past president, and you're currently on the board of FastMed, or the Florida Alliance for Sports Medicine. Can you tell us a little bit more about FastMed and what they do to better serve and benefit our student athletes?
So FastMed was the brainchild of Senator Bill Montfort, who's was a previous superintendent of schools, and he works now with the state legislature, and he is responsible for getting information about legislature in regards to student athlete safety. So he commissioned this board, which is made up of the largest groups in the state, and their sports medicine teams all each have a representative, and their goal is to advise and counsel the state legislatures on ways that they can pass laws to protect athlete safety. From there, the Florida Alliance for Sports Medicine, or FastMed is what we call it for short, has worked with the Florida High School Athletic Association Medical Advisory Committee, and we put on educational seminars for coaches, for athletic directors, for athletes, and for parents. We educate athletic trainers, and we are strongly encouraging each high school to have an athletic trainer to help support the safety of the athletes. We also work with various organizations to help get supplies to these schools, including cold water immersion tubs, automated defibrillators, and other supplies that we feel are critical to the safety of the athlete.
Dr. Morse, thank you so much for joining us today. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Drink lots of fluids and be safe.
Absolutely. For the folks back home, we are 30, maybe even less subscribers away from hitting 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please be sure to go and subscribe so we can better serve you. If you keep staying and tuning in with Facebook Live, we're going to stay keeping you active. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.